What's going on, guys? It's your boy Anthony alongside the best Big Three account in the universe, Big 3 News, aka Will, back with another edition of the Fourth Man. Will, how's everything going? How are the holidays? Are you excited about 2020 coming to a close here?
Holiday was great. My Christmas was great. Much different Christmas than normal, but I was very happy, very fortunate, very blessed that I was still able to see everybody and everyone has their health and their happiness. As far as 2020, I'll tell you what, it's been a crazy year for a lot of people. And a tragic year for many. So I certainly won't diminish it. I try to be careful when I sort of relate life events to years because I think, there's no difference really between December 31st and January 1st. It's really just a time that we assign it. But, the good news, I guess you can say, is that one difference might be that on January 1st, we can say, all right, there's going to be Big 3 games this year.
Very true. Very true.
For 2020, it's been the year without the Big 3, and it's been tough for us, obviously. It's been tough for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And at the bottom of the list, it's been tough for us because we've been in off-season mode. But I'm very excited, and I hope that we get some sort of announcement, some sort of update sooner rather than later, so then we can just get the ball rolling from there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We did not get our Christmas wish of Big 3 News from the co-founder, Jeff Kwanowitz, but nonetheless, maybe he's just looking to etch that news into the 2021 year. That being said, we do have a little bit of news to update you guys on, just with some players or coaches or even prospects around the league. But before we get into
house cleaning.
Some house cleaning, exactly. So before we get into all that, as always, if you want to find the show on social media, it's at Fourth Man Pod, at Big 3 News, and my personal's at @A_Siggy. If you want to watch the show instead of listen, if you're more of a visual entertained person, we'll go with that. Visually entertained. If you're more visually entertained, you can check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/fourthmanpod, and watch the show. Subscribe, leave feedback if you don't mind while you're there. And for those of you tuning in on Dash Radio on the Nothing But Net channel for the first time, or you're a repeat offender, we appreciate you guys as always. Man, that did not come off.
What a term.
It was supposed to be a compliment, but that did not come off.
Oh, my gosh.
Complimentary.
I apologize.
If you've listened to the show prior to this one, thank you guys for tuning back into the show. Okay, let's start with big news from Threes Company's coach, Michael Cooper, who was nominated to the Naismith Hall of Fame, a guy who has won at the NBA level, the GLeague level.
That's the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
The Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, to reiterate and clarify. He has won at the NBA level, the GLeague level, the WNBA level, and has had some big success on the Big 3. Initial thoughts on this, Will? I feel like you got something that you're ready to explode on.
Perplexed about how this man hasn't been in the Hall of Fame 20 years ago.
Prior.
I mean, my God. I mean, and I jokingly said the Basketball Hall of Fame, but I'm going to say that is sort of important because unlike the NFL, unlike the MLB, it's just the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right,
so
right.
Lisa Leslie and her accomplishments in the WNBA are being recognized by the same institution as Jay Wright for his, I don't know if Jay Wright's a Hall of Famer, but Jay Wright for his, wins in Villanova. Right. So it's all going to the same place. So the reason why I point that out is because Michael Cooper is the only man in basketball history to have a ring in the NBA, the WNBA, and the G League. And he was 50 points away from having a ring in the Big 3 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you look at him as a player, he was part of the Showtime Lakers, which from a historical standpoint is basically the franchise or the dynasty, I should say, that accelerated the growth of the league. The reason why we have so many Lakers fans today and such a strong tradition of basketball in Los Angeles because of teams. He was on those teams, and he wasn't just riding the pine the entire time.
Right.
He was their defensive stud. He was guarding the best player every night. One defensive player of the year. He was defensive first team a ton of times. So, we've sort of seen guys like, I know Kareem said something the other day, and I don't know if Magic said something. I think Rick Barry said something as well, of just how deserving Michael Cooper is. And to be honest, it should have been done a long time ago. But I'm just happy that Michael Cooper is alive and healthy, and he'll be able to accept his nomination and be there. And, I'm glad it was done now.
Yeah, 100%. And, you kind of highlighted some of his accolades from a player standpoint. This is a guy who has done it also as a coach. So, like you said, long time coming for somebody who has accomplished so much at so many different levels and at so many different positions. It's really amazing to see that now he's just not been nominated. It's crazy to think that he wasn't in this thing already. But congrats to Michael Cooper, well deserved. And I think, as Three's company returns, I think that will, as long as he returns as coach, that's someone that we maybe want to kind of subplot throughout the season. Can he win at the Big 3 level as too? That could be very interesting. Other bit of news here. This is more in relation to leagues and maybe some competition going on here, Will, as the G League, or I should say the NBA, expands rosters to allow more veterans in the league. Each team will receive an NBA vet selection or roster spot for free agents with 5+ years experience. Explain this one to me a little bit more, Will, because I'm a little confused on it still is this an implementation to the G League or the NBA? Regardless, I think there's some competition that's brewing here with the Big 3 in the league.
So here's how because I was confused too when I read this, and I think I may have confused things even more when I reported on it, because I think I just reported on what I thought it was, where I actually I might have to clarify some things. So basically what is happening is there's going to be like a pseudo G League season this year. Right. I think
there were reports that they were trying to get in the bubble when
so I believe
the season started in February.
The G League teams are going back to Orlando, the bubble. So they're going to do what the NBA did. And I believe that there's only 18 teams. I believe out of I don't know how many G League teams are, but I saw that 11 aren't going. So there are 11 NBA teams with G League affiliates that aren't having a G League team this season. 18, including the, what is it? Inspire? Is that the name of the team with all the kids?
Is that the high school team? Spire, with the one that LaMelo played for?
No. Oh, okay. That's what I'm thinking of. But what's the name of the G League team with like Jalen Green and all them?
Oh.
Ignite?
Keep explaining. I can find that for you.
Yeah, but so basically, they're going to be going to the bubble, and they're going to be competing in the bubble. For roster purposes, to expand the G League rosters while they're in the bubble, they've created sort of the G League's version of a two-way player, only it's like not a two-way. And the only reason why I say it's a two-way is because it's a two-way, like an addition onto the normal NBA roster.
Right.
Which is normally you. But for this, the G League, it's an additional roster specifically for veterans. So to qualify for this additional roster spot, the player has to have 5 years or more experience in the league. And to be honest with you, Anthony, I think this is a direct result of the Big 3 and TBT.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
I think number one, they're trying to draw viewership to it, right? In a season where they've lost so much revenue. Adam Silver is talking about making expansion teams, which I think the league is overdue for expansion teams. Just a way of making money. They're going to want to get some names in the G League, so maybe people tune in. Maybe people, I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe you have to like pay for like a season pass or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. But they're trying to get more eyes on this product. I think guys like Joe Johnson, guys like Xavier Silas, guys like Frank Nitti, who played in the Big 3, and then more recently, you got to give them the shout out, played for Overseas Elite in the TBT, show that, hey, these guys clearly still got it.
Yeah.
So, we were hoping that, they would sign to an NBA team. We think a lot of people who are in the Big 3 or maybe who are in the TBT are deserving of an NBA spot. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet. With COVID and everything, might have screwed it up, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think this is sort of the NBA's way of, maybe pushing the envelope a little bit. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. So first off, it was NBA G League Ignite. You were right on that part. And here,
Okay.
really, my thoughts on this are, we've talked for so long about how the Big Three has become this outlet for players to kind of take that Joe Johnson route and get back into the NBA like Joe Johnson did. We talked about how the TBT is also kind of trying to form a similar option. They've been kind of the biggest competitor because they play in the summer, um, both niche complementary leagues. My thought process is that the NBA is like, well, instead of letting these leagues kind of coexist or be complementary leagues, we can do all those things or provide all those things, and maybe put even a bigger spotlight on it. So why don't we go ahead and allow some of these NBA vets, Joe Johnsons, Amari Stoudemire's, whoever, who are maybe just playing in the league for fun or because they enjoy basketball, but let's give them an opportunity that if they're doing well in this G League, if they're playing well, NBA teams can view them and potentially call them up, and we'll form like kind of our own path so that we do get more eyes on a product that's ours. Like at the end of the day, like the Big Three and TBT are just complementary leagues, but that is competition.
That's true.
Any way you want to put it. And in a season where the Big Three goes down, the TBT has to, kind of do things a little bit differently. They're looking for a way to capitalize sooner rather than later. They don't know if the Big Three is going to return, or they don't know the Big Three schedule necessarily. And the TBT, I don't know if they're necessarily doing the bubble style again or how they're proceeding. So they're saying, while there's things in flux, let's proceed with our own plan. Let's try to capitalize on the current situation, and let's try to make up for the loss, like you said, of revenue from the G League.
Well, here's the
So
thing. I think I don't want to cut you off, but I think the advantage that the Big Three and the TBT still has over the G League is that it's a league of their peers,
mm-hmm.
right? So it's just one vet per team, and you're going to be in a bubble with all these young guys and all these developmental pieces playing other young guys' developmental pieces. So if you're interested, if your legitimate goal is, I'm trying to make it back to the NBA, what? And I say make it back to the NBA because you need at least 5 years experience. So I'm assuming, I don't know if 5 years of G League experience qualifies for that,
Mm-hmm.
but be that as it may, these aren't guys who are like, oh, I'm out of college, I'm just looking for another spot. That I still think there's a whole draft pool of guys who maybe went undrafted or decided to go overseas, or who even are coming from overseas in different backgrounds, where the TBT and the Big Three is still a better route. But honestly, I agree with you. At the end of the day, it is competition. I think the NBA absolutely a response. We've seen it, right? We've seen the NBA do things where we're like, that's a direct response. There's stuff in the All-Star game, the 4-point circle that they had in the 3-point. We're like, that's something that someone was
Free
watching the
throw,
Big Three
yeah.
game, and they said, oh, that's a good idea. Exactly, the free throws, things like that. So I think it's an experimentation, because if anything, it's a compliment, because it means the Big Three is working. It means it's good ideas. But honestly, I'm interested to see who exactly fills out these roles.
Yeah.
Is it going to be G League vets that we've never heard of? Is it going to be guys like, that we're familiar with from the Big Three who are looking to get back to the NBA? I'm not too sure. It'll be
Here's the
interesting to
thing.
see how
So
they
this
use
is
it.
it's actually interesting we're talking about this, because had on Jermaine Taylor very early on when the show first started. He was the second Big Three guest, and he talked a lot about politics. I mean, we all know politics plays some sort of role within professional
For
sports.
sure.
That's obvious. But I don't think we
Dion
realize.
Waiters just said recently that he was thinking of retiring because of politics.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that too. But I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of us, we magnify the big leagues because they're on the spotlight so much. They're the ones that draw the most interest. But I think if we take it back a step, not a step back for a second, I don't think we always realize that even in the smaller leagues, these politics are going on. And Jermaine talked about that.
Absolutely. Sometimes even more so.
Yeah, I was gonna say he
Because
talked
there's
about
no
that.
there's no fan backlash, or there's
Mm-hmm.
no like for instance, right? And I don't want to cut you off, but just to interject, because I agree with that so
Yeah.
much. Last night watching the Nets, Steve Nash played DeAndre Jordan down the stretch instead of Jared Allen. And, DeAndre Jordan is starting over Jared Allen. And people raged about it and enthralled. And people are still talking about it. But you might not get that in the G League or an overseas. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the biggest thing. Like, that would be the flip flop in the G League, right? The G League is all about developing. So why would we want to see an older guy to play? That's the thing. I think that while the NBA has kind of formed their own path, I don't necessarily think that the pros outweigh the cons for some of these guys, especially someone like Joe Johnson. Because first off, okay, are they gonna play a lot? Like, are these teams trying to win, or are they at the end of the day just developing players for their NBA affiliates? Right. There's so much I think that can factor into it that I don't know if it's necessarily the best idea. It might be a better option for, like you said, G League experienced guys who might need extra time to develop their own path. We've seen Christian Wood, how he's gone to a bunch of different teams. It took some time to really earn the spotlight.
Like a Siakam.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but just here's my question though, right? So let's say I'm, a big three guy, right? And I get signed on the G League roster. I go to the bubble and I'm dropping, 20 a night. I'm doing great. How easy is it for me now to be signed by an NBA team? Because it's not a two-way where they can just call up. I have to, and then clear waivers. I don't know how that works. Yeah, there aren't too many guys, to my knowledge, that aren't two ways that make it to the NBA in a G League season. We've seen guys play in the G League for a full season, and then the next year they're up in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen like a guy like mid-season. So unless you're in this for the long haul, unless you're like, I'm going to play a full G League season in the hopes that it's just more tape, and then next year I'm in the NBA, I think we're talking ourselves out of this.
I think we're realizing that this idea really isn't as good as we thought it was. Like, I think
I'm not going to go as far as say it's a bad idea. I just think it affects us a lot less than we thought, or it affects the Big 3 of the TBT is a lot less than what we originally thought.
Yeah, I resonate with that too. But I'm starting to think about it. Is this idea really that? Like, I guess I need to see it in every idea sounds good on paper, but
I got to see it in practice.
Actually put it into action. Yeah, is this going to be good? So I guess we'll continue to monitor that. Like we said, it doesn't really seem like it affects the Big 3 as much as we thought we did. When we break it down, but we'll see. There could be guys who maybe decide that's the better route for them, and it does work in their favor. It doesn't play out like they hope. So something to continue to monitor. Certainly,
we're definitely the only podcast that's going that deep into this.
Definitely, because we have the time to. But another twist that the NBA tries to bring in, and I think that is a lot to do with the correlation of other leagues, like we said.
110%. So,
let's talk about Dion Waiters real quick, because we talked about he's contemplating retirement. Politics play a big part in that. He obviously won a championship, but didn't really play inside the bubble after signing with the Lakers. He's looking more and more. He's a guy we speculated on for a while. Let's put that out there. But he's looking more and more like
he was so young.
Yeah.
But now
it has not gone well for Dion Waiters since the plane ride.
Right.
The aftermath and everything.
I hate to say it, that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. But the more and more we look into this, him contemplating retirement, I mean, does this seem like a guy who's a prime candidate to maybe play in the Big 3 and be like some of the other Big 3 guys who are like, screw the NBA, we're going to play for a different league professionally, and we're going to make this the next biggest topic?
Yeah, I mean, listen, shout out our guy Mikey Domagala on NBA Buzz. He was the one that originally posted it. But when I saw that quote and then when I saw that clip from Instagram Live, I was like, oh my God, he might as well just be like, I'm trying to play in the Big 3. I mean, he was like, I'm 29 years old. I think he said something to the effect like, I still got gas in the tank. Like, I still got years left. He's like, I'm thinking because of politics, and I don't want to go overseas. He said something to that effect. So, all right, well, if you're the Big 3, you check all of those boxes immediately. I mean, 29, okay, you got gas in the tank. All right, so you're still looking to play. You don't want to go overseas. All right, well, you can stay home. And then as far as the politics stuff, listen, there are probably politics in the NBA. In the Big 3.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it. There's going to be politics in every setting where people are in charge of other people, building teams, but I would assume that it's probably far less and
Yeah,
probably
definitely. It's
different.
more like the politics are more like, oh, I've known this guy longer than you, or I played with this
Right.
guy for more years.
Right.
It's a player empowered politic move.
Yeah, but also too though, you look at a team like Bivouac, was picking up CJ Leslie a politic move, or was that a move where they were like, this is a young guy, we're gonna bring him in and see what he does?
Yeah.
Dion Waiters, I feel like, maybe in the past we would be looking at like, all right, well, who in the big three has played with Dion Waiters? Right? Where are the OKC
Mm-hmm.
guys? Where are the Heat guys?
Cleveland
But
guys. Yeah.
now Cleveland, right? But now I say, if Dion Waiters is in the draft, I mean, my God, is somebody not going to pick up Dion Waiters? They absolutely will.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a legitimate. I guess he was a starter for Miami before everything happened, but sort of like a sixth man, definitely like sixth, seventh man. So no, he would do incredible in the big three, and he would, if he could platform to continue playing basketball, and he wants to check off all of those boxes, I think the big three makes the most sense.
Yeah, and I think it's suit his standards, like you said, checks all the boxes. So hopefully those 2 and 2 can come together. I don't know if there's any other guys maybe he's connected with from the big three. Maybe some guys will break it up as the season gets closer. Who knows? Maybe Ice Cube saw
Hey
that.
man, yeah, I mean, if you're a captain, and this guy, I might, shoot that DM.
Yeah, make him a co-cap. Like if he gets in the draft, whoever gets the first pick, it's probably top 3. He's probably going.
Oh,
so
probably, yeah. I'd have to imagine.
You're
I mean,
definitely
he
looking to
would
make him a
probably
co-captain.
be. Yeah, I mean that's true, right? Like
That's how
I'd
you
say
snag
make him
your
a
guy.
co-captain. Yeah, you make him a co-captain. Yeah, no, that's what you do. That's what Killer Threes did for Frank Nitti, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look how that worked out.
They're
I could
like, we
definitely see
want him.
something similar. What'd you say?
They're like, we want him, so let's just make him a
Oh yeah,
co-captain.
yeah, and we've seen that before, and so absolutely.
So Dion Waiters doesn't want to play overseas, but Nick Young does want to play overseas. In fact, he is going to play overseas. So pretty crazy because it wasn't more than a year ago today. We thought we'd be seeing Nick Young playing with Gilbert Arenas on Enemies. I mean, that was a
almost
lot.
Confirms that we were right.
Right.
This confirms that we were correct.
Yeah, I mean, it has to, right?
It has to. Because he's still playing. He still is clearly still seeking a profession to continue his professional career.
Yeah, and him and Gil have a good relationship. It only made sense. I think the time was coming.
It was coming. It was absolutely coming.
But COVID kind of shut it down. Nonetheless, Nick Young is playing overseas, so he's getting back into. I mean, he's probably in basketball shape, but he's kind of getting back into the routine of playing all the time.
That's true.
What do we make of him playing overseas? Like, is this a preparation of the big three when it returns?
I mean, it might serve that. I don't know if that's his intentions, but it may end up serving as that. My only issue is I don't want to lock anything in because we don't know what the big three schedule is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And off the top of my head, I don't know what the CBA schedule looks like. So the big three schedule might start, and completely overlap with the CBA. And Nick Young's like, all right, well, I'm already in the CBA, so I'm not coming. Or it could finish up and, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think with the CBA, I feel like there's a lot of outs in the contract. That's what I feel like I've seen. But that's usually for NBA opportunities. So you're right. I don't know. Nonetheless, it's good to see Nick Young playing again. You know who else is playing? That's been kind of a prospect or we've kept an eye on from the big three that's going to be in the NBA.
Who's that?
Is Jeremy Lin.
Oh, yeah. Jeremy Lin I think he is going to be like that veteran for Santa Cruz Warriors.
Yeah, so he joined the Warriors. I guess he hasn't joined them yet, but he's agreed to join them. But he's got
something like that.
Some issues to work out.
I think he has to. Right, he has to work out some like contractual issues. But that's interesting, right? So if Lin is their vet, then that to me means like we're gonna see guys like Isaiah Thomas,
That's interesting.
People like that, I don't know.
Now I'm thinking, does this correlate with the big three?
Well, I mean, how realistic were Isaiah Thomas and Jeremy Lin in the big three? I mean, those would have been huge splashes, but how realistic was that really? Or maybe
it's true. It's true. You can say that, but like try to put yourself back in the time frame after season 2 concludes. Like, are you expecting Joe Johnson to come in? Honestly,
probably not.
No,
Probably
you're
not.
probably not. So at this point, I don't want to. There are guys I feel like you can rule out, but I'm not ruling out too many. Like I'm not crossing too many people off my list because at this point, I don't know. Like Zebo, we
Well, that's
really wanted
yeah.
Zebo to happen, and it did seem realistic. But
You willed that into existence. Let's be real. You
okay,
manifested that.
you willed that into existence.
I am Will.
Yeah, there we go. You are
But I
Will.
mean, no. But I mean, let's cross out the guys, right, who are probably not joining the big three this summer. You know, off the top of my head, LeBron James, Kevin Durant,
Wow. All
and
right, so we're just going down the
Davis,
NBA best players. Gotcha.
Wilt Chamberlain. Just, you know, guys like that. But no, I agree with you. There aren't too many guys I would rule out, and maybe Jeremy Lin, Isaiah. Remember when Josh Childress? Remember when Josh Childress got mad at me because when everyone was doing like the lunchroom meme, um, and I was just I made like 20 tables of like everyone from the big three, and I put Josh Childress at like the same table as like the ghost of Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Josh Childress was like what the hell is that? Like
What is
what
that
did I
supposed
ever
to
do to
mean?
you?
Yeah, like, that's kind of a compliment. You get to play with
That's what I
one of the
thought.
best basketball players ever. It's just his ghost. Could
Just
work in
his
your
ghost,
favor.
you know. No, but honestly, back to what we were saying, you know, maybe this is like the step before the big three. So guys like Jeremy Lin, guys like Isaiah Thomas play in the G League, and they're like, okay, it's either happening or it's not. Okay, it's not happening, so I'm just going to play in the big three. You
Could
know,
be.
because this
Like,
is like clearly like you were on a G League team, you were in a NBA system, you were on a roster. You want to make it back to the NBA. You played in the G League. Are you making it back or not? There's no more of this like I just need a shot. I just need a shot. Give me a shot. Give me a shot. Give me a chance. Okay,
yeah.
here's your chance.
Let
Still didn't make it, which I don't think unless they go out there and they go crazy. But I agree with you. I think a lot of it's going to be developing the young guys. I don't know what their roles are going to look like. So once they go out there and just completely dominate,
yeah.
I don't know how many of these vets are going to make it back through this pathway.
And I think with the big three, I think it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off you because, see, I don't know if
Right.
necessarily people come in and are thinking like, oh, NBA opportunity is what I'm seeking. So let me make sure I'm doing all I can to get that. You know, I think people are kind of
For what? For the big three or for the G League?
for the big three. You know, with the
Oh,
G
yeah.
League, I feel like the pressure's on because that's exactly what your intention's for. And not saying that pressure isn't good, but maybe there's some guys that come in and are like, man, I'm just looking to play. I'm looking to continue to craft my skills into this new way for maybe some of the older guys, or maybe I'm just looking to play and establish myself in this league, and the opportunity comes on. That might
Oh, well,
be,
I mean, there are a camp of players, you know, Nate Robinson, Evans, that we saw that would probably be pissed at us that we were bringing up the NBA this much.
oh, I
You
know.
know,
I
they
mean,
they
Nate,
they
Reggie
said
Evans.
we are big three players. We are no longer NBA players. You know,
Mm-hmm,
let's talk about the big three.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Reggie
and
Evans said that
to
specifically
that,
to
I would
everybody.
say the big three hasn't happened in 2 years. So this is what we're talking. We've talked about everything. But I also agree with that to a certain standpoint. But it's just a very intriguing thing.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, I think this will have an effect on the players that we see, you know, become eligible for the big three or maybe look to join the big three. But I don't know if there's going to be too much of a competition for those same players.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just continue to monitor it. You know, we still don't know what the young wave is going to look like with the rules being lowered, and we don't even really know how the new rules are going to play out. That's something that we were asking players early on, and you know, everybody gave
The
us the
big
same
three, yeah.
response. We don't really know what to expect because we haven't seen it yet. So,
Right.
like
And all
this,
these open tryouts.
yeah, exactly. So it could be just an influx of guys out of left field. We just don't know. So hopefully that answer will come in the year of 2021. Last thing we want to touch on, because I think the two of us both think this is pretty dope. Xavier Silas
Oh, yeah.
it's been reported that he wants to be a head coach in the NCAA. I think specifically, but he wants to be a head coach. Has coaching experience in the NCAA, has coaching experience in the G League, has played in the NBA, played in the Big Three. Might have some high school coaching. Yeah, Big Three champion.
Yeah, so high school coaching, it's funny. This is the thing I want to highlight. So he basically, I don't know the history of this program, but he basically has been in charge of Colorado Prep, I believe the name of the school is, in Colorado. And I believe that under his advisement or under his coaching, they're like a top high school program in either the nation or maybe just Colorado or like in their region. I think this has really been the springboard for him being like, all right, now it's time for me to coach college. Colorado Prep, I know he's been doing that for the last few years. And I was just reading an article where they said that really under him, this thing has just like taken to the next level. And like all the top Colorado prospects are like coming to him. Like it's basically becoming like
Oak Hill.
Like exactly. I was about to say, it's basically becoming like how Oak Hill was Jersey, like Northeast. It's for the Colorado prospects. They're all coming to play for Xavier Silas in Colorado Prep. So it would be really cool to see him do it. And I hope that he gets it. I know Xavier reached out to us and he asked for a shout out. So, absolutely, we'll do whatever we can to help,
Yeah.
I need a college team to root for. So wherever he goes.
Exactly. Well, I think he's a guy that has blazed a lot of trails. He's been the first to do a couple different things. Even specifically here in the Big Three, and to hear that he's doing so well from a high school level that he's ready to take that next leap is awesome. So wish him the best. Hopefully a team gives him some kind of opportunity, whether it's a prominent one or put him in a position to grow. It's gonna be dope to see Big Three representation, more and more. I think we
and also too, absolutely 110%. And also too, before I forget, on piggybacking on Xavier Silas, James White also wanted to know that he's also trying to coach in college.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting because
so everyone's we're just getting a ton of colleges from the Big Three, which is awesome. I think people are seeing, oh my God, we're gonna go down another rabbit hole, but I think people are seeing Stat and Chauncey Billups in the NBA. And they're like, okay, maybe I'm not joining an NBA coaching staff, but I'll absolutely go do college. I'll absolutely go do a mid-major somewhere. You know how many colleges there are, bro?
So many. I mean, if you go in to put in your education, there's so many different
That's
options.
what I mean. You're telling me if James didn't go to, or Xavier Silas didn't go to, some mid-major somewhere and was like, listen, I play in the NBA. These are my credentials. I'm just trying to develop these kids. Oh my God, like absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be like, okay, sure. Yeah. Come coach for us. Be the stat of our team.
Right.
That's crazy because I didn't know James White wanted to even coach. I feel like Xavier has really expressed it over social media or through different articles.
He's been very vocal about it. Yeah.
And James White just comes in your comments like, oh yeah, me too. Like, okay. that's another way to approach it. But I could definitely see him as a coach too. I mean, this is a guy that's coming off a championship just a couple, I guess now. I guess it's been less than 5 years in the Big Three and knows what it takes to win. So would love to see Flight as a coach as well. So I think we've covered everything just in regards to our guys from the Big Three. Updated you guys on what's going on for them. We have a really dope interview on the back end of this episode with the founder and content creator for Forgotten Seasons. If you haven't checked them out on IG, really dope concept. Essentially, they're just highlighting and shedding light on, I would say mostly the 2000s era, but just like memories, accolades. A ton of Big Three guys, memories, highlights, accolades from just not necessarily the main guys that we're used to seeing on other outlets, other throwback outlets, but just different seasons. I mean, anywhere from your favorite duos to like this team specifically and what they were able to do with their Big Three. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff. So we kind of jump into that, but we had a great conversation. So let's just get into our interview with Dylan from Forgotten Seasons. Okay, cool. Today we're excited to welcome in the founder of Forgotten Seasons. If you haven't checked them out on Instagram or their new podcast, highly recommend it. We had the founder Dylan on here. Appreciate you coming on, man. How's everything going? How are the holidays?
Things are good, man. Thank you guys for having me on. Excited to get into it.
100%. I've been a big fan of your page. I guess kind of like in the summer, I found out about your page, and I was like, man, just kind of going through the archive and vault. I guess let's start here. How would you, like, when people are like, oh, what do you do in terms of creating content? Like, how would you describe Forgotten Seasons to our listeners that are listening or watching, and that are unfamiliar with you and your page?
Yeah, so I guess like the one sentence description is that I shed light on the forgotten seasons, players, and moments in NBA history. I try and find the angles that people aren't really looking at. So I'm covering the household names, but trying to find just the stuff that doesn't get put out there all the time. And I like to think that I'm sort of in my own lane with this.
Yeah, 100%. And how did the idea come about? Are you someone who's fantasizes about like seeing the seasons beforehand, maybe, or how did this idea come about?
I mean, like all of us, I'm a huge consumer of just all around NBA content. I kind of consume it everywhere, and I'm sort of a historian of the game myself. I've just loved the game, played it my whole life. So just seeing a lot of the content out there that did sort of the throwback hoops and just throwback basketball content, I was just noticing they're covering the same sort of players, the household names that everybody knows about. But I sort of wanted to create an outlet that was for real basketball fans and that shed light on those guys that we knew in our childhood growing up who were killers. But for whatever reason, just as time goes on, their names sort of fade out of the limelight. So I've have experience with graphic design, with journalism a little bit. So I just kind of threw some stuff together, and here I am.
Dope. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
become just gonna say you've kind of become like the Instagram vault, of seasons, memories, accolades that, like you said, people forget about over time. So I thought it's really dope.
Basically, I agree with Anthony. It's absolutely a dope concept, and I agree 100%. Like, you see these pages, and when it's a throwback, I feel like the throwbacks are always like a Vince Carter dunk or like a Kobe game winner or things like that, which everybody loves that, and people respond to that incredibly every time for a reason. But for you, I guess when you're going through these archives and you're going through the history of the NBA, is there certain criteria? Are there certain boxes that you have to check off for like the difference between maybe a streamlined, historical moment or a forgotten season?
I mean, it's a good question. When I'm sort of going through the process of figuring out what I'm going to post, I sort of ask myself, if somebody's scrolling through this, is it going to get them to stop and read? Because especially with Instagram, everyone's just scrolling. Like, you got to get their attention. So there are those players that immediately stop people in their tracks, the Vince Carters, the Tracy McGrady's. But, I'm trying to, again, just like take that angle and say, okay, everybody knows Allen Iverson. Everybody knows Kobe Bryant. Like, you're not going to remember every single moment. So what is that moment that maybe gets people to stop? So there's not really like boxes that I check, but I just sort of ask myself, like, if I was on the other side, like, would I stop and actually read this?
Yeah, and seeing your account now, we were sort of talking about it before the show. It is fairly recent, I would say. This really hasn't been something you've been doing for years and years and years. When was the moment? Was there a specific post or just something that clicked when you really started to see this thing blow up?
I mean, I'd say like a week in, actually, Steven Jackson like took a screenshot of a post that I made about him and then reposted it, and I got like 800 followers off of that. So I got that base. But since then, like, it's not as easy as like one post or two posts that sort of like catapult you up to thousands of followers. I think it's more so just like staying true to my page's identity, staying consistent, like trying to post every day. And the results come. Like, as I'm sure you guys know, like it's not a one day thing. Sometimes you'll have a post that does better, but there really is no telling, like, when you're making that, oh, this is going to be the post that's going to get thousands of impressions, whatever. I think just like having my identity of my page and staying true to it, some click and some don't. But yeah, that Steven Jackson post, when he reposted me, that's when I sort of like got the base and I guess the confidence to really keep going with it.
That's awesome. And from one Big3 player to another, it's kind of good that we got you on this time because I was able to kind of scroll through your account a little bit and find your first post, which I saw was Josh Smith of the Hawks at the time. He was also a member of Bivouac in the Big 3 last year, so not sure how familiar you are with the Big 3. But was Josh Smith like a favorite of yours, or what made you start with him?
I don't know, man. I mean, I love Josh Smith. Like growing up, he was really just like the premier high flyer in the league. And again, a player that sort of had a exciting but short prime, and then just sort of, you know, like a lot of players couldn't sustain that. But you know, I think he definitely fits in the identity of my page. Somebody that had just like a short prime, like super exciting. His highlights are a blast to watch. But no like particular reason why he was the first one.
Well,
in terms of, go ahead, Anthony.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like your page mostly consists of times throughout the 2000s. And I guess I'm assuming that's just the era you grew up in, or maybe it's even your favorite era. But I mean, throughout that, is there a certain player or team that you feel like is very underappreciated and people on your page like engage with you and they're like, oh yeah, man, I forgot about this. They were really underrated at the time, or maybe even overrated?
I mean, the 2000s, I think, sort of just naturally came about. Like that was the era that I grew up in. Like when I first really got into the game. You know, in terms of like a certain player, just to like list off a few, I think Michael Redd is definitely one. Kevin Martin, Sam Cassell, Chauncey Billups. Just like it was the era that was sort of pre-social media. And, you know, things happened during that era that they weren't blasted to Twitter. They weren't blasted to Facebook. So you'll find some stuff that was just, you know, on SportsCenter and wasn't really like, you know, pushed out to the masses. So I think that's just like what I most resonate with the era. My audience is probably like, most of them are like 20 to 40 years old. So that sort of like fits in right to the middle of that.
In terms of today's era, if we fast forward to today, are there any guys that you see maybe who aren't getting the love that they deserve, or maybe somebody that you watch play now, or maybe a few years ago where you're like, I feel like one day they're going to be like really like right for my page?
That's a great question. I mean, the first guy that pops into mind is James Harden. I think another thing that I've just noticed with social media is that it's just filled with hate. I try and just like shed light on the positive aspects of players. And with James Harden, like there's so much that you can pick. You know, he draws fouls, you know, does his off the court stuff, whatever he's doing. But just like on a historical standpoint, like the guy, one of 3 to 5 best scorers ever, unguardable, like maybe the most unguardable perimeter player ever. So that's definitely like a guy probably at the top that I think 10, 20 years from now, we're going to be looking back, watching his highlights and saying like, probably should have appreciated James Harden more. Maybe another player that like, another player that's like down on the list. I really like Sabonis on the Pacers. Okay. I really like Brad Beal. There's a lot of players that are on sort of like bad teams that I hope they get traded to a contender. So yeah.
And then what about, so then let's even expand that question then further. Like all time, is there some team or some guy that you think of maybe from the 80s or the 90s or maybe like even before, where you're like, if social media was around, or like, you know, this guy just was maybe born 20, 30 years too much earlier, you know, why isn't anybody talking about this guy?
I think Chris Webber was a guy that he was just so good, like really ahead of his time, like power forward, big man that could handle it, that could shoot it, that could pass it. I think that if he was a player now, like he would be a no question top 10 player, be the center of an offense. And like those Kings teams were really, really good. But for whatever reason, I think, you know, small market, obviously a lot of people just remember him from his Michigan days that called timeout that cost him the championship. But Chris Webber was really, really good. And if he was playing now, he would definitely be a super duper star.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Chris Webber too, because I feel like people either know him from Michigan or from now him on TNT, and then he was really catching a lot of hate during in the bubble. Like I know JJ Redick was like saying some stuff, but really like between that, he had a stellar NBA career.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely, I agree with your take that he really was like a modern big before modern bigs.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I feel like too, if he was somebody like now catching a lot of flack, you know, we just saw James Harden was catching a lot of slack, and all he had to do was go out and drop like 44 and 17, and everyone just forgets what's happening. So, you know, it's too bad Chris Webber can't just jump back in and post his own big numbers there. I know this is probably a tough one just off the top of your head here, but with you, you know, being more familiar with the 2000s, if you could put together a top 5 from guys in the 2000s, what would that like center to point guard lineup look like?
Center to point guard. So point guard, it depends. Are we talking like best or like my personal favorite? You want the best?
Yeah, let's go with best. Trying to win a game.
Game. All right, we're trying to win a game. I'll go Steve
Good
Nash
for
at
you,
point.
by the way, for being able to distinguish my favorites and my best, because I would have just said my favorites and been like, they are the best because they're my favorites.
I'll start with my best, and then if I can think about my favorites, I'll go into that. I think if I'm like, it's a good question. Like if you're constructing a team from the 2000s, like to win you a game or to win you a championship, I'll stick with the early 2000s. So like I'll go. Or I don't know. I was thinking, like, is LeBron valid?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's listed as a point guard in fantasy basketball. Why would he not be valid?
It has to be pre-Miami. It has to be pre-Miami.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is Cleveland 2000s. Yeah.
I'll go Steve Nash at point guard. People give him a lot of flack because he won 2 MVPs, but that's not his fault. Kobe at shooting guard. I'll go LeBron, and then I feel like you just got to go KG Duncan or.
No Shaq for you?
Yeah, I was gonna say Shaq for sure at center, and then power forward, man. Like I'm gonna have to go with Tim Duncan. It's a big debate, like KG or Tim Duncan, but you know you could argue that KG is the more talented player. But how can you not go with Timmy?
It's tough. It brings you the consistency.
I love Timmy.
Every
I'm
night.
such a pro Tim Duncan guy, so I love to hear that.
Yeah, no,
so
I'm
now
a big
what
fan
about
of those Spurs guys?
Yeah. So now let's sort of now shift focus back to the account and everything you have going on in the content creation. So you have a podcast that's been out. You have 2 episodes, and you've had some heavy hitters as guests. Episode 1, you have Raja Bell. Episode 2, you have Mike Bibby. So now this might just be advice maybe just for us, but how are you landing all these big names?
Man, I mean, it's not easy. Those 2 guys happen to follow me, and in the Instagram world, when you send a DM to somebody who follows you, it goes to their messages. And when they don't follow you, it goes into their requests. So I've just been reaching out to everybody that's followed me. And luckily I've come across some generous guys, Raja, Mike, a few others that have taken the time. But you know, it's not easy. I think these guys are so busy and they get asked all the time to join stuff. But I would just say blast as many emails or texts as you can, try and take different angles, you know, try and find their agents or something. But the more shit you throw at the wall, the more it's going to stick.
That's very true.
What have you learned most about, or maybe you learn more about when interviewing those guys, whether it be Raja Bell or Mike Bibby there?
You know, I think these guys like to talk about their heydays, you know, who wouldn't. They were a part of some amazing and historical times. And I find that these interviews just turn into like overall conversations, and they're reminiscing on things that happened 15, 20 years ago. So they'll remember stuff as they're talking, they'll bring up little details. And I think that's what it's all about. Like I'm trying to put them back into that season, into the situations that we're talking about. So I think it's just that, you know, these guys, they've been out of the spotlight for a little bit, but once you bring them back, the stories keep flowing, and it's really great to pull what you can out of them.
Yeah, and the angle you're taking is super interesting. That's what I really like about the podcast. It's not just a generalized, questionnaire to these guys, what are you doing now? How is this when this was happening? I mean, you're focusing in on one season specifically. And that's what I really love about the podcast, because it's almost like if they were chopping it up with maybe their teammates or guys from that time, it's just kind of a conversation that you can really go into a deeper hole and continue to find different things that's archived in them, rather than just like a generalized, like I said, questionnaire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's 100% the goal, trying to distinguish it and just get as like specific as I can.
You talk of goals. What are like sort of the long-term goals with this? Is this something that you're continuing to do? Is it, for this platform, this account that you are building yourself and that you've already built yourself? What are the long-term goals with this?
I think just continuing to do what I do, like staying in my lane and being consistent and not trying to like chase anything. I think that if you do that and you put in the work, the results will come. But I think bigger picture stuff, like I'd love to be able to support myself financially through it. Something that I'm not able to do right now. I have to find that in other places. That would be great. And, I think just continuing to develop it and have it be a brand. I'd love to do like longer form video stuff, like maybe documentary style stuff, maybe like longer form written stuff, articles, books. So, I'm just going to keep doing it, keep trying new stuff, and we'll see where it takes me.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, we're obviously a Big 3 podcast, so we got to tie in some Big 3 questions here. But you've covered a lot of guys throughout your page. What I think got me really intrigued at the beginning is like, oh, I follow a lot of these guys in the Big 3 now, but now I can kind of reflect on their career. Yeah, mm-hmm. Exactly. So because you've kind of reflected or shed light on some of these careers, who's some of the guys that you enjoy maybe watching now, or if you've checked out the Big 3 that you enjoy, or maybe in the future would enjoy watching in the Big 3, from some of their heydays?
Yeah, I like watching Corey Maggetti's guy that I've watched highlights. Just like I love the mid-range guys, and especially like the guards, the forwards that can just like get it on the wing, get it on the block, and get you a bucket. So he's definitely someone that I enjoy going back and watching. Some guys that I would like to see in the Big 3. I think like Dirk would be really fun. He his last few seasons, like he could barely move out there. So
it's half court. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. He would definitely be really cool. Some of the guards like Steve Nash would obviously be really cool. Baron Davis would be sick. Iverson was gonna and then just dipped, right?
He played a couple games.
It was complicated.
Yeah, he played a couple games. It got complicated, and then he dipped.
When is the what's the deal with the season? Is there any do they know when the start of the season is?
Yeah, so I think they're aiming for next summer. We're sort of still waiting on updates. They've been teasing that there's this big announcement that they're going to drop. So hopefully, every week that goes by, we hope that there's going to be this big announcement. But it's supposed to be next summer. Whether or not they're going to move it around a little bit or maybe shorten the schedule because they really don't want to coincide with the NBA, which is now sort of
this upcoming summer.
This upcoming summer. Yeah.
They just don't want to run into maybe the back end of the NBA or the beginning of the NFL. So trying to figure that out, and they had a partnership with a Big Brother company trying to kind of make a reality TV styled show. I think kind of at the beginning of when everybody was being quarantined, and I think that shifted more focus into 2021. So it could be a really big year for the Big 3, but all in all, I think we're just looking forward to the season more than anything. And
yeah, for sure.
In terms of Baron Davis, I mean, they didn't really end too smoothly relationship-wise, but he did ball out in that second season there in the Big 3.
Oh, he was in the. Oh yeah, he was in the Big 3.
Briefly, It's complicated.
If any guy exits, it's complicated.
3's company point guards, it's complicated.
Something about it. But anyways, we appreciate your time, man. really appreciate the insight into the page, and looking forward to seeing, what you're going to continue to do and shed light on when it comes to the Forgotten Seasons.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I'll be on the lookout for you guys. I think it's really dope that you guys got your own lane. Not many people doing what you guys are doing, so it's really great what you guys got going on. And thanks for having me.
No, thank you, Dylan, and
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. And before you go, if there's anybody who has now listened to this interview and is now chomping at the bit to follow you, where can they follow you? What's the best place to do that?
You can go to my Instagram page at Forgotten Seasons NBA. I got a link in my bio that goes to the different podcasts, YouTube. So find me on Instagram.
Awesome.
There you go.
Appreciate you again.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, that was our interview with Dylan from Forgotten Seasons. A super cool account. I think when he referred to himself as an NBA historian, I think he really hit the nail on the head. And it's just is really cool for someone that, loves basketball and, just not only the stuff going on now, but really the history and the story of the sport and the NBA behind it. It's just a really cool account for me, especially with a ton of guys from the Big 3 that he highlights, just to go back and look at every once in a while and just sort of be like, oh my God, like I remember that team, or, and a lot of it is stuff that I'm learning from the first time. So I was really happy that we were able to chop it up with him. So thank you guys. We appreciate everybody who tuned in to listen. The guys on Dash, you guys, you're listening to it first live, so feel special about that. Everybody else, thank you for listening, whether you're listening to this audio on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, or if you're on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that we can keep bringing you this content. If you enjoy it, please leave a comment. Let us know what you're thinking about all this. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys next episode.